Alright, hey everyone, this is Ash. Welcome back to The King's Speech. So we're about to dive into my reaction review for One Piece chapter 971 in just a few seconds here. So like I mentioned in my last video, depending on how this chapter plays out, what events are covered and things like that, I may or may not touch on this. But like I mentioned in my last video, I might talk about, have more concrete thoughts on my problem with how the Oden Kaido fight was handled last chapter, because I had an opportunity since there was a week off and I had some time after recording the video. I had a chance to kind of browse some forums and gain a little bit of a consensus on what the ideas, feelings were regarding chapter 970. So depending on the events of this chapter, I'll see if it's worth visiting those ideas or not, or if it's just, pointless at this point and we should just kind of move on. But that's something to decide once we get into it. So without further ado, we're getting into One Piece chapter 971, Sentenced to Boil. And we have the continuation of Gang Badge's Oh My Family, Volume 20. As you see, Gotti's gotten away from the Marines. Or no, was it the Marines? Yeah, I think he got his ass kicked by the Marines. He's gotten away from them, and he's chasing after Chiffon to bring her back. And we have, of course, translation Stephen Paul, lettering by Vanessa Satone. And so we have back at Kozuki headquarters, we have, don't eat that Momonosuke. It hasn't been tasted for poison yet. And you have Momonosuke going, Mother, why is my life in danger? And you see one of Yasue's vassals, tasting Momonosuke's food for poison. Called back to that moment in Dressrosa where he was having Chopper be his poison taster. So apparently Oda wanted to draw, a callback to that. And we have Toki just being absolutely stoic, completely emotionless at the prospect of her husband about to be boiled to death. We'll talk about this at the end on why she might be so calm. But she goes, because your father is a great man and you're meant to, and you are meant to one day carry this nation on your shoulders. Oh boy. And you see the vassal going over to Lady Hiyori going, it's safe for you, Lord Momonosuke. Lady Hiyori, and then he reaches for one of her food things to sample that. And you see Momonosuke going, Mother, is it true that father will be... And you see him just getting all sadness. He thinks about, his father dying, as Toki's just sitting there stone-faced completely throughout all of this. And you see Hiyori going, brother, in confusion because she's obviously hasn't been told what's happening. And you see the public execution of Kozuki Oden and his 9 vassals will begin momentarily. And you see this platform leading to this giant bubbling cauldron with huge flames surrounding it as it blubs away. And you see everyone rushing to watch the festivities as they go, hurry, it's not every day you get to see a boiling. It only takes a second because they use oil. We don't want to miss this. So you see, I assume, a badly bandaged Oden walking up to the execution platform. As you see the denizens of Wano going, so he couldn't beat Kaido in the end. Even for a fool of a lord, I thought his strength was the real deal. So what was he good for anyway? And you see Kaido and Orochi, guest seated as the guests of honor as are presiding over this, sake cups in hand. And you see a mumble among the audience. And as you see Oden being led to it, he goes, I request that you give me a chance. It is imperative that I survive. And you see Kaido is getting super pissed off with what Oden says. And you see one of Orochi's vassals coming up behind Oden going, into the pot already. No more jokes. Don't beg for your life now. And he goes blup and he slips, has a little bit of oil, seems like it fell on the platform. And he slips into it with an and a fish. And someone goes, what the? And he said, help me. As you see him just boiling away merrily, and he pulls himself out of the pot to the side, goes for the whoosh. And you see all the citizens running, we go, no, stay away. And you see his desiccated corpse just lying on the ground with a hiss. And you see Oden going, all 10 of us will enter the pot together. If any of us withstand the boiling for the amount of time you agree upon, please let them go free. And his vassals are going, Lord Oden, what is this? And you have someone going, withstand? Oh no, that must be Orochi going, withstand? This is an instantaneous death sentence. Mwahahaha. And you have Kaido just going, go get a clock to count the time. And one of his minions goes, yes, sir. And Kaido goes, you have 1 hour. Whoa. Let's see you last that long. It's enough time to get lightheaded in the bath. And you have Oden going, do I have your word on that? And Kaido goes, of course. And you see some of the citizens going, you still won't just give up. Can you make it quick? I've got errands to run. Pathetic to the very end. And you see as Oden steps into the boiling oil, he goes, ah! As you see the flames attacking him, and you see his body start darkening. And the vassals and the scabbards run forward going, don't let our lord go alone. After him. And we'll meet again in the afterlife. And you see Oden grabbing the plank that he used to get into there going, all of you, get on top of the plank. Then you have a very artful looking panel of Oden, kind of mimicking Atlas with hoisting this board above his head with all the scabbards perched on top. And you see the flames just, flaming up and bubbling up beneath the pot. It's a very, very well-drawn panel. And Kinemon goes, no, Lord Oden, stop this! And Cat Viper goes, it ought to be the other way around, Lord Oden. And I think Denjiro goes, we should be the ones to hold you up. And you can see that Oden's just like straining under the weight as his nose is bleeding. And he goes, shut up and stay there. This is an order. And you have them crying out, Lord Oden! And Orochi goes, hey, what's going on? His vassals aren't even touching the oil. And Kaido goes, whoa. But all 10 of them are within the pot, it's true. Very entertaining. Well done, Oden. And you see that Kaido is also apparently heavily bandaged after the attack that Oden delivered on him. And you see the audience murmuring, he's holding up 9 great big men on his own. That would take incredible physical strength already. But to do it while standing in boiling oil? And you have Shinobu on the side just going, Lord Oden, as she's watching this. And you see, as he's straining, the clock slowly ticking away. And you see that the strain is starting to get to him as he's gritting his teeth, and the oil's still bubbling away. And the vassals going, Lord Oden, put us down! Kaido's like, whoa. What's the matter? It hasn't even been 1 minute yet. And you see the clock continuing to tick as everyone's just watching this. And the townspeople are a little bit taken aback because they're starting to gulp. And, what is it? The Fukurojo, the ninja guy, goes, how strong can one man's skin be? And you see Kanjo going, I feel as though the heat alone is going to bake me alive. And then Cat Viper's like, stop whining, Raizo. I'll really give you something to complain about. Oh, sorry, that's Raizo, not Kanjuro. To complain about. All we got to do is stand here. You have Denjiro going, don't move, Cat. The shifting will weigh on him below. And you see that it is indeed true as you see Oden's arm muscles straining. And you see blood vessels starting to burst with a bisht as his blood is literally boiling from the inside out. And you see on the bottom where his feet are on the cauldron, you see that the heels are also starting to bleed as the skin is cracking away. And he's huffing and puffing as he's trying to hold his weight. And you have 4 minutes passed as the clock continues to slowly tick away. And you have some of the watchers going, I heard it was only supposed to take a second. This is surprisingly boring. I thought he'd be screaming and dying in agony and such. I'm going to get going now. I can't waste any more of my time on this fool of a lord. And you have Shinobu just getting furious as she's finally had it with this. And she knocks him down and goes, how dare you call him that? Say it one more time and I'll end your life. He's like, eek, ah! It's like, what's that woman doing? Look out, she's got a sword. A kunoichi? And you have Shinobu just like, And you see, it's just he pulls a sword on him. And the civilian she knocked down is like, it's like, stop! And she goes, you are the fools! And one of the ninjas notes, "That's Shinobu, Captain." And you have Kawamatsu going, "What's Shinobu doing? Why is she making a scene?" And she goes, "Who do you think has been ensuring that you all live in peace? If you lose Lord Oden now, you'll all come to understand. You'll know just how much misery he kept at bay. Orochi is no shogun or even a dictator. Orochi doesn't want to rule over a populace." And we finally get the reveal of what he and Oden talked about back in the castle as we flash back to Orochi going, "If you ask me, every single person in this land is guilty of persecuting the Kurozumi clan. I don't care if every last one of them dies. I took the shogun's throne to drive this country into ruin, to complete my vengeance. Years ago, my grandpa committed a crime and was forced to commit seppuku. Our clan fell into ruin, and that was one thing. But then the rest of the family left behind was chased and terrorized by strangers who claimed they were performing justice." And you see a bunch of the Kurozumi clan running away as people are grabbing them and tossing them into fires and over cliffs, chasing them with pitchforks and things. He goes, "They beat us, threw us in the river, killed us. I was so terrified of the mob of fools that I couldn't sleep. The man who committed the crime was long dead at this point." And you see them flashing back to the bloodline of the daimyo killer. "Apparently even a child can be a criminal if he happens to have the name Kurozumi." And you see Oden's just shocked by this news. As Orochi continues, "So everyone in Wano is a target for my vengeance. You will reap what you've sown." And then she goes, "Then from a room in the back he produced a tribute for Kaido, a great stock of weapons, and many hundreds of kidnapped people." And you see him going, "They'll be sold, tortured, or killed. Once handed over, their lives would be finished, their fate sealed." Lord Oden was furious, but you see him striking a blow or exchanging blows with Kaido and his mace. And then Shinobu continues, "And Orochi made a suggestion. You want to stop the kidnapping? But if you go to war against us, you will lose far more than you bargained for." And she goes, "The enemy was an agent of vengeance with no interest in the good of the country. It was clear that more would be lost than just the question of victory or defeat. So Lord Oden chose to accept Orochi's offer. If he made a public dance in the buff at the same time every week as an apology to the Kurozumi clan, then he would lose all of his standing, but he would save 100 lives with each dance. He trusted their promise that 5 years later they would agree to sail away from this country when they were done building their ships. So he traveled from region to region every week, making certain that nothing had changed. For all of these years, Lord Oden has been protecting this land. So tell me again who you are calling a fool of a lord." We have next chapter hits February 21st. All right. So I guess I will go in order from the beginning to the end with my thoughts rather than kind of jumping around. Yeah. So overall thoughts. I can tell Oda thought that this chapter, had enough emotionally affecting material that would kind of make up for, the rushed aspects of literally everything else in the flashback. And it feels like he knew that he felt like he was hinging on the fact that this chapter would kind of be the saving grace, where, everything would kind of become clear, and we'd finally see how noble and gracious and everything Oden is, and, how he's such a man of a man, and all that. And that's really not how it works. I mean, there could be cases where, you could have a weak kind of beginning and middle and kind of really nail it with the ending of the emotional climax. But a lot of it really depends on the reader investment in the character and their struggles and everything else that they're going through. And at least, this is a very much a situation of your mileage may vary. Some people will be more affected by this than others. But to me, this chapter really was dragged down by the weaknesses of everything preceding it. But I'll kind of get into that at the end once we get through the other stuff. So Toki's reaction is interesting because up to this point, I still do not care for her as a character because she has been a walking plot device up to this point. Where Oda's introducing this, mystery around her, being like, oh, she's from Wano 800 years ago. She's been traveling through time, blah, blah, blah. And then she's kind of basically been sidelined, to act as a support for Oden, to kind of hype him up and talk him up and talk about how great he is. And I know that the counter argument always to this is always going to be, well, we haven't seen the full story yet. We don't know what Toki's deal is. You got to rely on Oda. But you cannot tell a story and always hinge on this idea that the mystery will eventually have an answer, and depend on the fact that that said answer will be satisfactory to what a reader wants. And I don't really think it's good quality writing to do something like that. But I think the thing that strikes me about Toki having basically receiving super calm, like the argument could be that, she's just trying to hide her emotions because she doesn't want her children to get upset, blah, blah, blah. She's putting on a brave face. But this isn't a theory that I think myself personally and a few others in the fandom have held, is the idea that potentially Toki is able to see into the future, much like Charlie or Katakuri, but exponentially to an exponentially greater extent. And so it might be end up being that the explanation is the reason she's not afraid of what's happening to Oden right now is because she knows that everything will turn out all right in the end, and this is just a temporary setback. But Oda wants, I don't know if this is a case of like, Oda's just insinuating this, that's what we're supposed to believe. Oda's really not giving us enough to work with for a situation like that. And given how little effort he put into developing the relationship between Oden and Toki, a lot of this again just falls flat because we're not really invested in either of them as characters. And then so we get to, I think, the second interesting thing I noticed in this chapter was Kaido getting super, super annoyed and mad at Oden telling him, it is imperative that I survive. I request that you must give me a chance. And this feels like Oden twigged at something really personal that hit a nerve with Kaido. So I'm curious when or if we get the eventual Kaido flashback, if we're going to see what that ties into. Because it ties into a lot of my ideas and theories, I think, of Kaido feeling like, he wasn't treated as human or as worthy of, respect or humanity and all that. And so I wonder if every time someone else suggests that, they're deserving of the same basic, respect, decency, pity, whatever, I feel like that might twig on him a little bit where he's just, where it hits a nerve for him where he's like, I never had the same opportunities. No one ever gave me a chance. Why should I give you a chance that I didn't? But that is pure speculation from speculation. So of course we know that, Kaido probably has a lot of fun with torturing, and probably gambling. So why not take a chance on Oden? And I'll say, objectively, yes, this is a badass moment where, Oden's doing the whole Atlas thing. He's doing something noble and selfless. He's sacrificing himself to protect his vassals and everything else. But again, this kind of goes back to what I've been saying before, where Oda didn't spend enough time developing and having the readers be invested in this relationship. So to try to hinge an emotional moment like this, where Oden's doing something like this, which has all the hallmarks of something, where you'd want to sympathize and empathize with the character, it falls flat because we as readers don't really care about Oden as a character. So a moment like this, it's you can see where all the emotional beats are supposed to be coming from, but none of them land because Oda couldn't be bothered to put in the effort to develop it enough to actually hit. And this kind of comes to the other problem I've had because like a lot of this is very reminiscent to moments when you think of something like Drum Island, where Luffy was climbing up the Drum Mountains, with Sanji and unconscious Sanji and Nami, and you could see him, him viscerally hurting himself, as he's ripping his skin, he's being battered by the cold, and he's doing it all, for the sake of his friends. This is like Oda's obviously going for that same kind of emotional impact with this scene, but we haven't had the chance to develop or build a bond with these characters in the same way we have with the Straw Hats, even in that early of a time. So again, a lot of these moments where it's like he's trying to evoke the same emotions and feelings as those past moments, but it just falls flat, and you're sitting there thinking, I should be feeling something for this character, for his suffering, for his, supposed nobility, but it just doesn't really do anything for you. Which leads me to the very last kind of criticism of this chapter, which is again Shinobu's kind of playing the role of, the narrative device in this chapter, where she's telling us all why we should be, pitying Oden and why we should be feeling sorry for him, which is very, very kind of reflective of Dressrosa. But like this is very much a way for Oda to kind of shorthand all the development he skipped over. He's kind of telling us, oh look, Oden was misunderstood. No one really knew the real him, and he's such a noble guy and he's doing what's best for everyone. But you really can't just tell us, how we're supposed to feel about this character and what he's done without showing us, why it's important that we should be feeling a certain way with regards to it. And then, of course, we have Orochi. Orochi's backstory, again, kind of reminiscent of Rogers and Ace's thing, where it's like, oh, can you blame the child for the sins of the father? Which, again, it adds a little bit of depth to Orochi and his motivations for doing what he does, but it really doesn't swing the needle either way for me to make either feel more pity for him or to feel more, revulsion for him for kind of being, a jackass that's going around being vengeful because of what his family was persecuted for. I think I was talking with a friend, and this definitely feels like something where the case is going to be turned out that Orochi and the Kurozumi clan were pawns of the pawns and patsies for CP0, and I'm pretty sure that's the same thing that's going to happen to Orochi again in the present. Is it's going to turn out he was a pawn patsy for CP0 who wanted to take over Wano, and kind of reap all the gold and profits and everything from it. And their plans got sidelined by Kaido's unexpected arrival to the island, which kind of made it hands off. So I expect at the end of this arc, when he dies, that'll come back around to play it again. But I think final closing thoughts on this chapter is that we can kind of see where the tragedy is supposed to be built up around this chapter, where we had Oden, be this character that even though what he may have done was culturally taboo in Wano, even though the expectation being that Wano is a conservative country, there's certain attitudes and traditions and everything. People are expected to behave a certain way and inhabit certain roles. And you can see how Oda built it up with Oden to be like, well, Oden was the black sheep where he didn't conform to societal norms. He wanted to do his own thing. Even though it looked like he was doing something selfish and self-absorbed, etc., he was doing what he thought was best for his country, even though it didn't look that way. We're kind of getting a rehash of that in this chapter. But like I've pointed out like multiple times before in other videos, if you want to have that emotional crux built around a character like this, you need to actually develop and showcase, the basis for it. And if Oda had done just a little bit of that, where Shinobu points out in this chapter that Oden went around to the different provinces to make sure that no one was missing or no one was hurt, and Kaido and Orochi were making up, keeping up his part of the deal. If he'd done a bit of that with the flashback at the beginning, where he showed Oden going around to the different areas of Wano, building a connection with his people, and kind of exploring the reasons why it was so important for him to open up the borders of Wano and develop him a little bit more rather than trying to maintain this air of mystery, which really kind of sucked out all the emotional investment of the character. It would have made this moment land way more powerfully, and it could have honestly been more reminiscent of something like, say, Mont Blanc Cricket's flashback, where you have kind of the same kind of thing where an innocent man is being put to death, for crimes he didn't commit, for things he didn't do. But Cricket's flashback was more emotional than Oden's because we knew, why everyone loved Cricket, what made him such an exceptional person, and why, that's the reason his death really landed harder, was we were emotionally invested in him, and we saw that through, his crew who all loved him. We knew the reasons why they loved him, which made that land so much harder. Whereas with Oden, we're kind of just told scabbards love him just cause. And again, that kind of leads to this kind of moment. And before I forget, I should mention this at the top, but last little point I want to mention with this is giving a character like Oden, certain characteristics like being noble, selfless, self-sacrificial, all that alone does not a good character make. And I think that's a problem Oda's falling into recently, where he thinks by giving characters certain positive characteristics that are well received and well looked upon by readers, it feels like he thinks that's enough to, make us like the character and be invested in their struggles. It's easy to do that when you're contrasting that character with someone that is very laughably, evil and embodies all the negative characteristics we associate with the villain. So it's very easy to kind of play those characters off each other and be like, well, you're obviously supposed to be rooting for this guy because he embodies all these characteristics we're taught to value or glorify, versus this guy who has all the opposite characteristics, like selfishness, he's cowardly, self-absorbed, weak, all that, blah blah blah. But the key aspect missing there is you can't just give them these characteristics. You have to give them those characteristics and then point out or showcase how those characteristics define them and make them different from, every other generic person that embodies those similar things. And that's something Oda really hasn't done with Oden at all. So, I mean, honestly, like, there was good bones to this chapter, and if Oda had invested a little bit of time and effort into developing Oden, developing his relationship with the citizens of Wano, and just kind of investing more effort into it, he would have reaped more rewards with a chapter like this and probably gotten the desired emotional payoff he wanted. But because he didn't, it really kind of went to waste, and it's a pity that it did, because this could have been a very good highlight, but it ended up falling flat. So I think I've ranted on for long enough about my thoughts on this chapter. So like I said, if anyone has any opposing thoughts, viewpoints, opinions, feel free to let me know either in the comments below or hit me up on my Twitter, and I'd be more than happy to kind of discuss it. I think I won't touch upon the Oden Kaido stuff because it feels like I already talked enough and that's too much of a tangent. So maybe I'll talk about that in a future time or something else. Maybe I'll do a separate video or something on it. But yeah, honestly, that chapter left me feeling really drained and yeah, not really excited to talk about anything further. I hope once we get out of this flashback and into the current time, hopefully it picks up again and Oda finds his stride. But it really felt like he's been rushing these last few chapters, and I feel like there's something going on in the background with him. So hopefully, he recovers, takes some time off, whatever he needs to do to come back, and hopefully get back to doing some quality writing. But apart from that, if you like my videos, please do like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I should have my other Shonen Jump reactions out for Haikyuu and Spy Family out by tonight as well, so look forward to that. And until next time, this is Ash. I'll talk to you all later.